What a wonderful group of people here. Reverend Dr. Michael Eckelbauer is here. Morning, sir.
Wow, there is lots of alumni, friends, community members, world leaders, Roger. We got them all.
Absolutely. Got them all. All right. David, I'm going to start to share my screen and we will begin. All right. Am I sharing the right screen? It looks like I am. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. It was a delight to spend time with you at the virtual coffee hour. I'd like to formally welcome you to the 2025 Creativity Expert Exchange Conference. I'm Dr. Roger Firestein. I'm Associate Professor Emeritus here at the Center for Applied Imagination at Buffalo State University. As we were planning this session, this conference, the faculty, we all figured out that this is about the 25th Creativity Expert Exchange. And we did an in-person Creativity Expert Exchange for about 20 years. And then for the last 5 years, we've been virtual. And so for 20 years, you came to us. The last 5 years, we're coming to you. And it's absolutely extraordinary the reach we're able to have as a result of using this technology. And it's also to be able to convey that excitement worldwide right now all together. So we're all together on this. This year, we have over 330 folks registered for the conference from more than a dozen countries. I'd like to welcome you all as you're coming in. We've also received about $950 in donations. Thank you for that. I'm going to be coming back to that just a little bit later. We call this as an exchange because it allows the faculty, alumni, current students, and folks that are involved in the creativity and leadership field to share some of their latest findings, both from the research perspective and from the field of practice. And over the years, we've decided to expand the reach of the conference to include individuals who are not only doing interesting work, who are also doing interesting work in just about any aspect of creativity, both within the department and in other areas as well. And when we use the word expert, we mean people that are working in the field of creativity, facilitating creativity innovation programs and organizations, and those of you that are passionate about how you apply creativity in your life. And I think all of us here can speak for that. There's a wonderful quote I came across recently from Alex Osborne, the inventor of brainstorming, and our founder, the O in the advertising agency BBD&O, and the author of the landmark book Applied Imagination that we've all read. Osborne said, "Nothing could give me more satisfaction than to teach people how to make greater use of their most priceless possession, the creative imagination." And that's why we're here today. And that's the joy that we bring every day when we do this work. And if you feel the same way, you're at the right place. Now, today and tomorrow, we have 2 keynotes and 17 concurrent sessions that will be delivered by 22 presenters. We have a wide reach of this. And in the spirit of sharing cutting-edge research and creativity with as many people as possible, this conference is free. However, we do incur some costs. We pay an honorarium to our keynoters, but the rest of the presentations and the rest of the presenters donate their time. Now, the faculty of the center organize and present this conference in addition to their already busy schedules of teaching and advising and research. So I'm appealing you to donate so that we can continue to provide an extraordinary event to you all. And I'll be asking you for donations again tomorrow. Thank you. And now I smile. Okay. All right. If you haven't donated yet, you can make a donation through Eventbrite using the same link that you used to register for CEE. This is going to be available through next Friday at 5 o'clock. Because of the way the system is set up, you just need to re-register, select the donation level, and select a donation level that's comfortable for you. So thank you. And once again, a special thank you to all of you who have made donations already. All right, so let's get started here. So once again, we start at 10 o'clock New York time. If you just mute your mic for now, to encourage exchange in this chat box, please match the Zoom name to your given name. So match your Zoom name to the name that you have in your chat box. You've already introduced yourself in your chat box. You've told us where you're from. Thank you, Dr. Keller-Mathers, for doing a great job of that. Welcome. All right. Now, some of the concurrent session presenters are going to be asking to keep your cameras on. Please do that. That makes us feel great. I'm going to do that in my session. So creativity education can be transformational. It was for me. I moved to Buffalo in 1978 from Colorado to get my master's degree in this department, and I'm still doing this wonderful work. But I'd like you to take a look at a video now from several of our program graduates about how what they've learned from studying here at the Center for Applied Imagination. And David, I'm going to stop sharing and turn to you.
I was in a crisis of self-confidence, to be honest, when I started. I never thought about entering into a degree of creativity and change leadership. I had my own company, as a small company, a small business. I've been an entrepreneur all my life.
It was interesting. I wasn't actually looking for grad school. I did know that pursuing an MBA, which was an option, did not feed me at all. And in fact, I was like, yeah, I could do it, I'm assuming. But there's no drive, there's no pull for it.
I hired as an assistant professor teaching fashion marketing and merchandising classes in the Department of Fashion and Textile Technology. And creativity was a kind of like a big challenge for me.
I think there were many things happening. At my work, I was saying overwhelmed, and I was feeling like I was not doing something for myself. I need constant change. I am a person that I get bored very fast.
Back then, I was in pharmaceuticals and looking to transition. So transition is something that was a little bit more in alignment with what I saw myself doing for the rest of my life.
So this came to a point in my life that was really critical because whereas I was certainly excited and happy about a new life in the United States, coming from Italy, I was also kind of scared and a little bit lost and vulnerable.
And so what that meant was two aspects of my life. There was a fair amount of dissatisfaction. I didn't know what to do about it. I didn't have any clue.
The challenge, I would say, is being in a position to paddle my own canoe, wanting to have the tool set that I needed in order to catapult me into another direction.
So when this was presented to me, it was really a sweet spot for the point I was in my life. It was really critical enrolling in the program.
I didn't expect that all the courses are very engaging. They really help students to change their way of thinking.
The amazing part of this is that you can get as far as you want.
A lot of time spent in reflection, a lot of interaction, and small team work and group work.
A place where misfits could come and be their unique self without having to capitulate or conform. This is where you can get it wrong and learn from it and leverage it. We have a framework that we get with the program, then you put the fabric on it.
The first aha, the first cognitive aha.
It really helped me to see my role as a leader. I was able to apply whatever I learned from class to my personal life.
I always wanted to teach, and I'm in a way teaching now. I'm actually doing what I wanted to do, and now it makes sense. It really changed the way I see the world.
To make a long story slightly longer, my relationships have changed for the better. Transformative, confidence building, a lot of intrapersonal growth.
This place made me grow as a creative leader. The best choice of my life, I always say, is marry Tim, and the second is to enroll in this program.
It was liberating. If nothing else, this could be that next big thing for you.
All right. Thank you, David. All right. So, you've just heard from some of our alumni that there's a lot of power with what we do here, and that's why many of you are here, because you've experienced this. And in many cases, in my case, and probably most of the people that are on this call, it's been life-changing. And that's our mission. to ignite creativity around the world, and we do that one person at a time. And we're so delighted that you're here from all around the world. I'd like to take a moment to just overview our agenda. But before I do that, I have some special thanks to some folks here. I'd like to thank Dr. David Yates, who is running all of the technology behind this that makes this happen. The CEE committee, Manny McDaniel, Daniel, Kristen Peterson, Melissa Wild, Melissa Rayom, and our current session presenters. Really thank all of you for doing that, for donating your time, for all of your dedication and all the detail that's making this run so smoothly. All right. Here is our schedule for today. We're going to have our welcome and introductions. That's what we're doing right now. We're going to have a keynote address by Dr. Todd Lubart, Creativity Meets Technology. From 12:15 to 2 o'clock, our concurrent sessions will be happening. And you want to go to your Zoom link for sessions that you want to attend. And then from 2:15 to 2:45, the state of the center. I'll talk more about that in a second. And after I introduce our keynote, after I introduce Dr. Molly Hollinger, we'll have our keynote presenter, Dr. Todd Lubart. And Dr. Hollinger will tell you more about our keynote presenter in a moment. This is going to be followed by a meal break from 11:30 to 12:15 Eastern Time. And for those of you that are interested in the graduate program or finding out more about what we do here and at the Center for Creativity and Change Leadership, our executive credentials, our SUNY Advanced Graduate Certificate, or the Master's Program, Dr. Udis and Dr. Puccio will be available to chat in a designated room during the meal break tomorrow. So you'll have a chance to go through the conference today, and then tomorrow find out more about our master's degree program in creativity and change leadership. And the link to the Zoom room is in the document and the website link that we've posted in the chat. We're going to be conducting a graduate program, a graduate orientation program on April 4th from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. New York time. You can use the QR code up there or the separate link posted in the chat box to sign up for more information. We do mini Cs, mini creativity expert exchanges, which are smaller versions of this event. And our next one is 1 hour. Our virtual mini C will be on polarity thinking, and it's going to be delivered by Bronco Broekman and Liz Monroe Cook. We're going to send out future announcements for registration through our mailing list. So that's one of the ongoing things that's happening there. And as Dr. Keller Mathers is done, please sign up for our mailing list. And during the meal break today, the main room is going to reopen for anybody that wishes to network and connect with other folks. Okay. Our concurrent sessions once again begin at 12:15 and end at 2 o'clock New York time. And for those of you that are interested about the Center for Applied Imagination, the faculty are hosting a State of the Center presentation today from 2:15 to 2:45 New York time. That's after the conclusion of the concurrent sessions. We're going to be sharing some of the latest activities coming out of the department, such as the forthcoming doctoral program, the innovation suite that we're building, upcoming events, and current faculty work. And if you're interested, please go to the main CEE conference room, the room you're in now, from 2:15 to 2:45 New York time. And this is going to be in the main conference room. The links for this session are available on the website and in the document they're going to be posting in the chat box. And let's just see here. Before we go into our keynote, for those of you who'd like to stay connected, here are some links for our mailing list, our LinkedIn, our Facebook page, our YouTube channel, and our distance program. There are the links, and they are also in the chat. Dr. Yates has put them in the chat. Now, we have several concurrent sessions throughout the day at the same time. Don't worry, if more than one session interests you, you're going to be able to see the other sessions because we're recording everything. And we'll let you know how to access those recordings when they become available. And we try to make them available as soon as we can after the conference. Tomorrow, we recommend that you join us once again during the virtual coffee time between 9:30 to 10. We had a wonderful time today. And be sure that your connection is working and everything is happening for you. And now I'd like to introduce our Dr. Molly Hollinger. Dr. Hollinger is an assistant professor and now interim chair of the Creativity and Change Leadership Department at Buffalo State University. Dr. Hollinger received her PhD in educational psychology with an emphasis in giftedness, creativity, and talent development from the University of Connecticut. She's currently interested in the positive outcomes of creativity, such as engagement, meaning, and positive emotion. So round of applause for Dr. Molly Holliger. All right. All right.
Thank you, Roger. So it's wonderful to see all these familiar faces from all around the world. That's really very cool. So thank you for being here today. And I am thrilled to introduce our keynote speaker today, Dr. Todd Lubart, who I'm sure many of you are familiar with that name. He's a professor of psychology at the Université Paris-Cité, a former director of an applied psychology research laboratory, coordinator of several grants and contracts. He has more than 200 publications, including articles, books, and psychological tests. He also serves on the editorial board of several journals concerning creativity and innovation. He received the prestigious Berlin Award from the American Psychological Association Division 10, the NAGC Torrance Award, and was a member of the Institut Université de France. Finally, he is president of the nonprofit, the International Society for the Study of Creativity and Innovation. And I will say Dr. Lubart has an incredibly wide range of expertise within the field of creativity, including both theory and empirical research on topics like creativity. Excuse me, apparently there's an alert in Buffalo. And creativity assessment, which I'm sure he'll touch upon today, how creative environments influence creativity, creative potential, and really, I could keep going here, but I'm gonna turn it over to Todd and let him speak to these topics himself, and also the main focus of his talk on creativity and how it meets technology. But before I do that, I'd also like to invite everyone throughout the chat to post your questions, and I will keep my eye on those questions, collect them throughout, and then once we get into the Q&A portion, present those to Dr. Lubart. So without further delay, I want to offer a warm welcome to our keynote, Dr. Todd Lubart.
Well, thanks a lot for having invited me to come and be part of the special event today. I'm going to try to share my screen. Let's see. It working? I'm just trying to check on the screen sharing here. Yeah. Ooh.
Uh-oh, did we lose Todd?
Seems like it.
Yes, we did.
Well, good thing we have a long chunk for our keynote.
Yeah, for sure.
That Amber Alert was a surprise. That was
Yeah, they said they were going to test today.
I'm sure Roger's got a keynote in his hip pocket if we need a stand-in.
Already queued up.
I'm suspecting a saboteur.
No, I'm clearly not that sophisticated.
Yeah, Todd has done amazing work throughout his, and I didn't know that he received the E. Paul Torrance Award from the National Association of Gifted Children. So I'm really, really excited for that because he is certainly the person who would be worthy of that, along with lots of other great scholars in the field. So
Sure, we'll get him back on here rather quickly.
He's one of those people where you really can't say his expertise is anything more narrow than creativity because he's done so many things
he
across the board.
really has.
Okay. Okay. Well, sorry. I think I'm back with you all, right? So,
Yes.
yeah, in fact, what's really great is I'm going to talk to you about how creativity interacts with technology, but I got a little trouble to show my PowerPoint on Zoom. So I sent it along to Molly. Maybe she can put it up, and then
Yeah.
we continue along. So what I plan to talk about today, and I'll be happy to interact with everyone, is how technology impacts our mode of being creative in a fundamental way. And there's going to be a first part focusing on virtual reality technology, and a second part on AI, generative AI technology. So yeah, if we can work out the screen sharing system there. I sent it to Molly and Gerard, so maybe they could help out. Hopefully. And then we'll get ourselves going.
Yeah, I'm looking for it right now, Todd. Molly,
Okay.
you sent it to my Buffalo State account, Todd? I'm
Yeah, I
assuming.
think so. I think so. Yeah.
Closer here.
I'm not seeing it. Molly, do you have Todd's slides?
Yes, I'm just
You do.
downloading.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
great. So to give you a little background as we get it up, we have a lab, a research lab over here in University of Paris, and there's together with me numerous colleagues, and we work on creativity, different aspects. One of the aspects is kind of technology related, and that's what we're going to focus on today. And so over the past 15 years or so, we've been doing work first on VR technology, and secondly, more recently, on generative AI technology. Oh, great. Okay, so we're getting there. So on the screen, you can see numerous people who collaborated on the work that's going to be presented today, because it's not obviously just something I've been working on all alone these past years. And so I just want to mention that there's a lot of people involved. Okay, so now maybe we can go ahead to our next slide there.
one more time.
Okay, great. So this first slide is a bit of the summary of the last 2 million years of existence of humankind. And technology has been part of creativity since the beginning. So if you go way back to our ancestors like Homo habilis, they were being creative, being innovative as they made tools to hunt with. So instead of just finding a rock that was a good shape and using it, at one moment, they figured out that they could transform natural stones into hunting tools. And using rocks, for example, they were able to transform and make all kinds of tools for hunting and other aspects of their life. Tools that are partly in wood, which we don't have any trace of, and tools that were made from other rocks. So this was, in fact, a form of technology to transform existing things on Earth into new things. Fast forward to today, and you know we have computers, which are everywhere in our daily life to help us do stuff. We have virtual reality systems now. We have generative AI systems like ChatGPT, and we're going to look at how these kinds of things are impacting what it means to be creative, how we can be creative. Okay, next slide. And as I see in the chat, it's true, language is itself a technology. Okay, so technology is a long-term evolutionary tendency. And we notice that tools seem to be getting more and more powerful over time. So start out with our prehistoric rock, move on to the potter's wheel, which was a major technological innovation many hundreds of thousands of, thousands of years ago. Move on to paper and writing tools, which transformed radically what it meant to engage in the creative process. Up next step, typewriter. So we're still using paper and putting words on paper. And then came along, of course, one of our favorite tools, the Post-it note, which changed how we do brainstorming in certain ways. More recently, all kinds of computer technology using Word, PowerPoint, and other tools. And nowadays, I'd like to talk about some next generation things that are arriving, notably virtual reality and Gen AI technologies and how they might impact creativity. Okay, next slide. So all of this can be fit into a broader theoretical context in which creativity is viewed as a contextualized phenomenon. It means that creativity happens over time and space, and some of the actors are not people like us, but the tools that we engage with. And so we have a kind of a back and forth between humans and their tools. An example of this is SMS, which came out as part of mobile phone systems. And this tool led to a whole creation of what's called SMS language, in which people invented various linguistic ways to convey information that didn't exist before the tool was there. So it's just an example of what we call the distributed sociocultural approach. Okay, next slide. So let's take a look back. Let's jump back 75 years ago to Guilford, who gave a speech at the APA in 1950, and Alex Osborne, of course. And what was technology then? Well, you see a few photos. By the way, they did have color back then in the 1950s, but I found these photos that were black and white. So you see the telephone, fixed telephone. You see a computer at the time. You see a typewriter. And you also see the hula hoops, which came out. You might say, well, what is hula hoops? What kind of technology is that? Well, that's a kind of a technology for having fun. And by the way, this hula hoop technology introduced new options in rhythmic gymnastics, which is an Olympic sport nowadays, it's called one of the engines to be used in creating sequences of gymnastics in one of the competition parts of the Olympics. Okay, so let's go ahead. Okay, first case, virtual reality. I'm going to show you a few things. So here we have someone in a headset. Maybe many of you have tried this or have these things with the handheld controllers. And on the screen, you can see where the person is. In fact, in their headset, they're in a virtual space. So with this kind of headset technology, we can create virtual spaces that may replicate or don't exist in the real world. Okay, next. So we're going to study creative environments and how a creative environment, in this case, a virtual one, might impact how people engage with creativity. Next slide. For the background, about 15 years ago, we wanted to build virtual environments to test what could be good to build in the real world, because we found that the way people act in the virtual world is a close version of what they will do in the real world. And so we wanted to model creative spaces. Here you see photos of spaces that are considered creative places to work in the real world. Okay, next slide. Now, perhaps some of you know this room. This is a virtual room created by Diego Uribe and John Cabra over at Buffalo when they were there. And they held CPS sessions in this room. And that building in the back was the private rooms where each participant could go in their own little room and think alone and then come to the joint session here. And so there was a case study of this virtual meeting room in a journal special issue, Creativity Innovation Management, back in 2010. So it's a source of inspiration. Okay, next. Okay, so here's what we're going to study. In our initial work, we took Second Life as a virtual space. We rented an island. And as you may know, in Second Life, there are numerous people hanging around as avatars, having social events, essentially, going to a dance club, taking a walk in the elfic forest, or hanging out on an island. And so we rented some private space there. Next slide. And we asked people, notably students in psychology at the time, what would be interesting to have in a virtual room, in a room, to make it a creative space, and what would be stuff to avoid. And based on that, we built a creative virtual space, a not so creative space, and a neutral space. Okay, next slide. So here you see our island. Here you see we're building our garden, because they said gardens are good for creative thinking. Next slide. And here you arrive in what we call the artist's house. This unites many elements that the participants, psychology students at the time in France, thought would be good stuff to have to make it a creative workspace. So you see nature, you see sunlight, you see books, you see artwork, you see inspirational things from outer space and green plants and so forth. And when you put students in there, they tend to say this is really a good place to be. In this slide now, you see the room that unites things that most students say we should avoid. It looks like the storage room at our psychology institute. And when you put people in there, they go, this is not inspiring me to be creative, okay? And I turned the light on because it's actually in the virtual world, it's a little more dim in this room here, but I turned it on so you could see it well. Next slide. Here you see the virtual meeting room, which is our neutral condition, and you see the real meeting room in our institute near Paris, where we have also people coming for a creative brainstorming session with their regular live bodies. So this is the sort of baseline room virtually, and in reality, we have it too. Okay, next slide. So when you show students these rooms, they confirm, new students confirm, that indeed the beach house is a lot more stimulating, they think, than the so-called prison storage room. Okay, and that they think it would induce them to be more creative. So this is a panel of external students. Next slide. Now, in this result, you will see people were brought in individually to either the beach house, the virtual meeting room, or the prison storage room. And they were given a task of generating unusual ideas for an object. And in the beach house, people generate, on average, about 28 ideas, whereas in the virtual meeting room, they generate around 20. And in the prison room, they generate around 18 on average. And there's not a significant difference between the virtual meeting room and the prison storage room, but the beach house is a lot more conducive to divergent thinking. And by the way, you don't see the real meeting room, another condition, which is exactly identical in performance to the virtual meeting room. In the graphic on the right, you see originality. And so the ideas are more original in the beach house than the other rooms. Okay, so next slide here, you see a co-working session. So now people are co-working in the real meeting room or in the virtual meeting room. These people in the virtual room are in little cubicles in our lab, not talking to each other, connecting via VR headsets and finding themselves in the virtual meeting room. Whereas in the real meeting room condition, they are just together, co-working. And they're looking for ideas to improve public transportation in the Paris region, which was requested by the transport ministry at the time. And so people knew this task was actually a real task to help the Paris region. And they came as teams of 3, and every time there was one of our researchers there as a 4th member to run the session. Okay, next slide. And what we found is that, on average, those in the virtual meeting room give more ideas than the real meeting room, and the ideas are more original, but equal in utility. So this finding supports the, quote, direct effect of being virtual compared to being in the real room, which looks the same, in fact. And we think it's partly due to the fact that you're a bit in a game-like setting, so you're not in reality anymore. And partly you're anonymous, because when you're behind an avatar, you feel a bit more that you can say whatever or chat whatever than when you're in your real body looking at people. Next slide. And when you look at the kinds of ideas that people give in the two places, what you find is that the virtual room is the dark bars, and the real room is the more white bars. And there's 6 kinds of ideas. We call them type A, B, C, D, E, F. And if you look, the thing that is the most creative are ideas of the type E, which is ideas that concern outer space and extraterrestrial ideas. And those ideas are more frequent in the virtual meeting room. So the actual impact of the virtuality is to get you out of reality to the extraterrestrial zone. And the ideas of that zone are the best kind to be creative in both rooms, in fact. Next slide. We also looked at whether this virtual setting is good for all people or better for some. And we used a creative profiler tool to measure things like risk-taking and other openness and mental flexibility. And what we found is that the virtual room is particularly good for those who are high risk takers. And if you're a low risk taker, we can put you anywhere and it doesn't help too much. Okay, next slide. Now, you noticed in our artist house, there were things in that artist house which were conducive to creativity, like books and plants and things. And you notice that people will be inspired or primed by things they see in the environment. And I'd like to call your attention to this study, which we did not do ourselves this time, which is on the right of your screen. And in that study, people were either in the room above, where they could see outside, where they had posters about topics, or the room below, where there were walls. And when people were in the room above, they had more creative ideas than the room below, because being enclosed limited their thinking, and seeing outside expanded their thinking. There's another study that's really interesting, but I don't have a picture, in which they put people in a room, and some people in the virtual room could knock away the wall of their room, and others could not. And this is obviously not possible in the real world. And when you're given the opportunity to break away the walls, you actually have more breakthrough ideas in the task itself. So virtual reality offers things that you can't do easily in real world settings, because if you give people hammers and let them break through walls, it's probably not optimal in a real world brainstorming session. Next slide. Let's talk a few minutes about the avatars now, because we represent you as an avatar. Okay, next slide. So you might be aware that people represented by avatars take on characteristics of their avatar. It's kind of like in the skin of an actor, you play it out. In some studies, not creativity related, they gave people what was called a nice looking avatar or a so-called ugly avatar. And they put them on a dance floor, and those who had the nice looking avatar asked more avatars to dance. But when they left the dance floor out of the study back to their own body, they left the building, those who had the nice looking avatar also talked to people more in the hallway as they were leaving. And when you give people a negotiation game and you put them in a big avatar compared to a small avatar, they negotiate more to get what they want in the game. And when they leave the study, they negotiate more to get more candy at the end for having been in the study than if you're given a small avatar. So we call this the Proteus effect. And we want to see if it works in creativity, because we can manipulate how you look through your avatar, because the technology allows it. Next slide. So now a study is done with engineering students. Students are either dressed up as inventor avatars or non-inventor, so-called normal student avatars. Next slide. They're brought into a room. They do a first task to generate ideas to make a motor less polluting. Then they all leave the room virtually, and they go into their regular student body and they do a second task about a different kind of motor. Next slide. What you find is that those who have the non-inventor avatar are less performant than those who have the inventor avatar. And when they leave the room, they all go into their normal body, no more avatars. But those who had the non-inventor avatar remain at the same level of performance, and those who had the inventor avatar remain quite performant in the task. So it's like the avatar effect, but this time for creativity. The control bars that you see is people in their real body in task 1 and 2, so they have no avatar, so just regular students. And so you see that we can induce creativity by the avatar, which in normal life, people don't like to dress up in a white suit and a white coat and say, put on hair like Einstein and everything else. But in the avatar world, they're very happy to do such a thing. I see the comment, the uniform gets you to role play. That's totally the situation. And the uniform is much more adopted in the virtual reality. Next slide. Here's a study of Alstom engineers who make metro and train systems in France. And in France, the Alstom company has a virtual metro system that circulates in Paris. Next slide. So these are going to be all engineers for the company of trains and metros. We dress them either as inventors, which they see themselves as, or as users. Next slide. And what we find is that when the engineers are dressed as inventors, they tend to find new technology ideas called technological solutions. And when they're dressed as users, called persona, they tend to find more new needs for clients that should be addressed. So the nature of the creative idea is impacted by the kind of avatar we give people. Next slide. In this last slide here, this part, we asked people, where would you like to work to do creative thinking? And they had choices. And we asked people, where would you like to work if you were alone, if you were in a group session? And you can see that we can offer to people options and send you there very easily, which in the real world is quite complicated to do. And we've also experimented with breaks during a brainstorming or creative thinking session. We can bring everyone to a beach by just flying there with your avatars, because avatars naturally have the capacity to fly, as you may know. And so we just teleport to a beach. We hang out for 15 minutes and we teleport back to our room. Okay, next slide. And here's the last thing. We tried some creative idea sessions in different platforms like Cluster and Glue. Okay, this is recent work beyond the initial work where we were in Second Life. Next slide. And we train people how to use a headset. We let them select their avatar. We let them select their room. And then they go into idea production mode. And these are sessions that last 3 hours in the headset. I don't know if you can imagine it, but people don't want to take the headset off. They're so involved. Next slide. This is a brainstorming session in Cluster, and it offers the opportunity to put all kinds of objects in the room. So it's a VR system that has specific things. Now you see a brainstorming session in Glue, a different platform, which offers Post-it notes and whiteboards. So different platforms offer different things. And the whole VR world offers a whole new perspective on running creative sessions. Next slide. So anyway, we found things about this use case. For example, how can we enhance people's choice of avatars? Because most people will choose an avatar that looks like them. How can we enhance the efficiency of training people to be in a VR session for a creative workshop and so forth? Okay, next slide. All right, now a few words about Gen AI, because everyone's talking about ChatGPT and all of that. And so how is that impacting this new technology? How is it impacting our creativity? Next slide. Well, first of all, it's impacting what we mean by creativity, because all of a sudden now we're talking about human creativity versus artificial creativity. And these systems are being trained, by the way, to give evaluations of ideas by humans. And they've become very good at judging human ideas, in fact, as good as any other human judge. These this Gen AI technology is impacting the process of creating because people tend to ask Gen AI to give lots of ideas, which Gen AI gives. And so the generation part has become so-called easier for us. And now we got all these ideas. And so the selection part has become a lot more of a big task for us. Before we had so few ideas that it was easy to select what was the best one because it was only a few ideas to anyway. Okay. The ability to create is evolving thanks to Gen AI tools. And studies are showing that average people are being more creative thanks to AI, but the high-level creators are not getting that much benefit. Sorry, I see I got some spelling errors in my slide. And the engagement with creativity is also starting to shift, and we're starting to see the emergence of subgroups that are more or less engaging with creative thinking because of Gen AI. Let's go to the next slide. So a couple years ago now, or a year or two ago, together with Florent Vanchon and many other authors, we had this manifesto. In the manifesto, we cite 4 use cases of AI. So first case we think is the best case, you co-create. Second case, you say, I did it all alone, human only. I didn't touch AI, so it's pure. Third case, you use AI, but you don't tell anybody. We call it plagiarism 3.0. And fourth case, you say, well, AI can do creative stuff, so I can just rest and do nothing, in fact. So you outsource to AI. Next slide. Now, when you engage with Gen AI, there's more or less 3 things that get discussed. First of all, can Gen AI assist me to be creative? In my job, can Gen AI tools be used to boost my performance? And if you don't know this website, check it out. www.there'sanAIforthat.com. You will find there the mega site of all different AIs that are being put out there for all kinds of jobs. Gen AI is a creative agent. Second big topic. Can Gen AI outperform a human on a creative task? And the third topic, how can humans and Gen AI co-create? Is there an interactive synthesis of these 2 contributions? And we're calling that co-creation. You notice it looks spelled wrong. It's not spelled wrong. It's got AI in the co-creation. Okay, next slide. So let's talk about AI's creative abilities. Next slide. Okay, in a study.
Yeah, I'm back in.
Okay, in a study that got published recently, together, Florent Vanchon and Valentin Gironi and myself, we gave a Gen AI ChatGPT system one of our tasks from EPUC, which is a battery for children, adolescents, and adults, in which we ask people to create stuff, and we have benchmark scoring with norms for humans. And so one of the tasks is a story task. And we say create as many beginnings or endings of a story. We give you the beginning of a story and you give many endings. And another task, we give you a title or characters and you make a big story. So we have a lot of human data on these tasks and we gave it to ChatGPT to do. And ChatGPT did it because since we prompt, it does what we say to do. And so ChatGPT participated 100 times in the task, giving as if it was 100 different people, you say. But it's ChatGPT every time. We wipe away its memory so it doesn't know it did it already. And in our system, a score of 100 is an average person, an average kid in France. We did it in French with French ChatGPT version, And if you get 100, you're like an average kid in this study of about 10 years old, okay, in France. So if you look at divergent verbal, DV, divergent verbal, ChatGPT 3.5 and then 4, the average score is 136 for 3.5 and 138, meaning ChatGPT is very performant in divergent verbal, giving many answers to how to end a story. We're scoring the number of ideas here. And it's acting as a gifted child in France, because if you have 130 or above, we consider that you're a very high performer in the task. But in IVQ, which is the one big story, ChatGPT is looking more like a normal kid. Okay? And so ChatGPT is getting on average 104 or 109, so around the normal score. Okay? And if you look at ChatGPT, how many times is it truly gifted, as we say, meaning high in both divergence and integration, the big story and the multiple story endings? It's about 1 out of 50, or 2 ChatGPT subjects out of the 100 subjects of ChatGPT were, quote, gifted, because to be gifted creative, you need both the divergence and the integration synthesis aspects. Next slide. And this is a story that ChatGPT produced a lot. Essentially, it's a story about Alice in Wonderland, because the topic we gave, the title was The Keyhole. And ChatGPT loves to tell us the story of Alice in Wonderland with a few changes and twists on it. So it's a pretty normal story to tell, in fact. And so we call that plagiarism a la ChatGPT. Okay? All right, next slide. Now, what you have to know is that ChatGPT has read everything there is to read. And it does a kind of a synthesis and combination of all this stuff. And it tends to give out stories that are well known, in fact, with a twist. And if you ask it 100 times, it gives you 100 stories, but they don't vary that much. And so it's a bit of a fixation effect on what is the average human going to give, in fact. The system is not made to be especially creative. If you tell it to be creative, what it does is it starts to give strange names. So it says, Mrs. Alice Weatherby from the southern country of I don't know where. Okay, so it tries to be a bit creative in its kind of strange way. Okay, next slide. Of course, ChatGPT is working, after having read everything, being compared to a single typical kid in France. Okay, so you have to realize that it's a whole generative AI system versus one average kid, and who does better. Now, I also mentioned that the definition of creativity is evolving thanks to this new technology. Before, we had the so-called standard definition: creativity means generating stuff that is novel and valuable in its context. The updated definition since the last 2 years now includes 2 more things all of a sudden. It has to be intentional, and it has to be authentic and autonomous, meaning that a Gen AI system has no intentionality. It does whatever, and it doesn't even know what it's producing, but it produces something that looks to us quite good. And authentic and autonomous, not totally there for ChatGPT, because you have to prompt it. It does not wake up one day and say, I think I'd like to invent a story. Okay? What is this example I put? Oh, sorry, let's just go back one slide to the one we were on. Yeah. You see Dabus? I don't know if you know about Dabus. Dabus was created by Stephen Thaler, whose photo is there. And Dabus is a system like a ChatGPT specialized that can invent stuff. And so it read about different patents, and you ask Dabus to invent a food container, and it invents ideas for new technology, new engineering ideas. And some of its ideas are so good that they got put up to be a patent. And so Dabus is a Gen AI for engineering that has invented stuff that was submitted to the patent office. In the United States, they said, if you're not a human, you can't get a patent. In Australia, they said Dabus can have a patent for this new plastic food container based on fractal geometry. Why not? We don't need to be a human over there. And so it's radically calling to attention, what does it mean to be creative? The technology is moving our concept on creativity. Next slide. Okay, this is the last sequence. This is the bonus, because you were expecting Gen AI, but I'd like to tell you a little about social robots. So, social robots are robots that interact with humans. And some social robots are being designed now to support or coach people to be creative. And you see an example of a robot by Peter Kahn helping a person do a Zen garden invention task. And you see other robots called YOLO, which are helping kids invent stories. Because as the kids say parts of their story, YOLO captures the sound, and YOLO moves around, circulates on the floor, and makes different color of lights from its hair. And this inspires the kids to add stuff to their story. So this is an example of AI embodied in a robot, which is not always humanoid, not always, helping people to be creative. It's like Gen AI as a support system. Next slide. Second example here, humans and robots co-creating. We call it humbots. And you see, first of all, Shimon, which is that musician there, that's a robot that plays a xylophone, and it knows enough about music and can generate ideas in music to be a player in a improvisational group of jazz. And so there are concerts with Shimon as one of the musicians. And so they are co-creating improvisational sequences of music. Next slide. Perhaps you know about this artist, I believe from South Korea, Shu Chung, who together with Doug One, which is a robot arm with artificial intelligence and pattern recognition, they co-create paintings together. And the human and the robot arm, they both participate to make the final work. Next slide. So now we're at the conclusion, in which I'd like to say the highlighted ideas were that creativity is technology sensitive. Virtual reality was a first example. It's opening up new creative spaces where we can work, new worlds, and these new worlds, these new rooms and avatars that represent us are impacting the creative output that we have as humans. And the second example was Gen AI, where it's opening new opportunities to create or to avoid creating, in fact. And finally, social robots, which is a Gen AI embodied, serving as a coach or a collaborator. Next slide. So this is my email, and I just say a word in case you're interested in ISSCI, which some of you are already part of. It's a nonprofit organization, scientific organization of those interested in research, or applications of creativity, and we have some events, mostly virtual. And you can check it out on that website. And if it interests you, perhaps join up with that organization. So thanks a lot for your attention. And now it's back to Molly and Gerard.
Thank you so much, Todd. That was really fantastic. Let's give Todd a big round of applause. Thank you so much. So as you can see, the chat box was very active. You prompted a lot of thoughts and a lot of questions. So there were a few questions around the sample of the study related to creative environments in the first part of your talk. So one question was, were these STEM students? And also the thought, how might this change if it was students from other domains, like perhaps the arts?
Okay. Well, in the first bunch of studies with the virtual rooms and the artist house and all, it was psychology students who are hanging around our institute and looking for bonus points. So they're like an unlimited supply of humans. Then we had some students with engineering students. Those were the ones dressed as an inventor avatar working on motors. Then we had the engineers who work at the metro train company, and that was the last study. And in the final set of work, where students were put into glue and cluster and all, well, that was again students in brainstorming sessions.
Great, thanks. Well, that also made me wonder, being a millennial myself, there's the joke that millennials won't talk on the phone. So I wonder, given that these were younger students or college age students, how it might differ for generations, like perhaps older generations might still prefer being in person, or generate better ideas and more original ideas in person versus younger generations. Is that something you've thought about?
Well, yeah, that is certainly a big question. And in the Alstom study of people who work in the engineers designing metros and trains, those people are around 50 years old on average. And secondly, we did a little event, which I didn't mention yet, in which we brought in all the people who work as creativity consultants affiliated with Créa France, which is an organization of creativity consultants in France. And we had a workshop with them. So we had around 30 or so participants, all running creative groups in real business settings in the real world as their job. And they're about 30 to 60 years old crowd, and they never had put on a virtual reality headset. Also, we can do it just on the screen. So you move your avatar, but you're not in the headset. And they loved it. And they said that it could radically change how they run their sessions. So we think that people of all different ages are ready to adopt this kind of technology, in fact. So it's to be studied or tried.
Thanks. Another question around the avatars and the sample was, someone thought there weren't any women in the inventor roles. Was that the case?
No, there are women avatars. Everybody can choose the avatar they want. If you're a male or female, you can choose to be in a male or female avatar, whatever you choose. And we always offer a set of avatars prefabricated or that you make yourself. And there's as many men and women options as you want. And sometimes we offer animal options too.
I remember you were giving a Division 10 speech, and you could be there in person, and so you did the speech as an avatar, which I thought was recorded it and sent that in, which I thought was really brilliant and a fun way to deliver that.
That's true. That's true. I talked about this work in a more less advanced state of work, and it was for APA Division 10 conference. And at the time, I got COVID, so I couldn't go. And so I sent my avatar.
That's great. That's great. Um, let's see. So another question in the chat was or first a comment and then leading to a question. It said, my success with AI is radically impacted by giving it a role. For example, play the role of a creative innovator versus play the role of a child, new to America. I'm curious whether you've investigated that impact. And also, are there other engines aside from ChatGPT?
Okay. Yeah. Well, we have tried it out a little. It's true. You can tell a AI system, assume that you are a child, assume that you are a very critical person, or stuff like this. And it will adopt that quote personality. And some AI engineers are working to enhance that personality effect so that you could actually have it pre-programmed in a way. Um, uh, Secondly, we have worked with numerous systems. I mentioned ChatGPT in particular because everyone heard of that, but there are others like Gemini, Bard, Anthropic, et cetera, et cetera. And so we tested out, like in a recent study, which I didn't mention, we tested out 4 different systems. And in fact, we found out that, yeah, one of them is a little bit better on creativity tasks than another, in terms of storytelling task, for example. Uh, and some of them are relatively modest. If you say, how do you think you did? They say, I don't think it was that great. But they say, but I'm supposed to really do problem solving and not be that creative, to tell you the truth. And some of them, when you say, how do you think you did? They say, I did great. I'm like the next genius. I'm like the next Michelangelo and Einstein put together. And if you want creative ideas, come to me. And then if you give it, we gave it a questionnaire of self-concept, which we use with humans too. And so it gave itself maybe 4.5 out of 5 on all the questions of how creative it is. And we said, why didn't you give yourself a 5? And it said, I learned to be modest because that pleases humans.
Wow, wow, that's pretty incredible.
Mm-hmm.
And also, yeah, very similar to how we behave as humans. Yeah, I think we have similar metacognition about our creativity. Some of us think we're creative geniuses, and some not so much. And whether we're accurate about that, I know there's a lot of interesting work on that as well. Thanks. So this is the next thought and question is from Gerard. He said, let's see, I'm curious about training and how training in creativity impacts the use of VR or AI. There is some early work that has highlighted the fact that those who don't have more experience with deliberate creativity methods can maximize the use of computer technology, such as AI and VR, in supporting their creativity. And so he was just curious about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, that's a really good question. I haven't studied that at all, really, because all of our participants are essentially not trained in creative methods. So they're all novices in that way. But yeah, if people do have training in being creative, how will they react in the VR world, VR systems, or using Gen AI systems? That's a definitely key topic to be investigated. I'm sure over at the center in Buffalo, you have a prime access to people with training on this. Whereas in our situation, we don't have that many people who have that level of knowledge. So, but it's definitely a good idea for investigation.
Well, maybe there's some possibility for collaboration in the future. Um, this is a really fascinating question from Kyle McCarthy. Have you done any work on AI human collaboration in using AI as a partner or sounding board partner instead of just a tool?
Um, yeah, yeah, we are doing that kind of study in which people can ask AI what AI thinks of ideas, for example, that the human gives. And in fact, you can train an AI to be a pretty good judge. So it's quite useful, in fact, we are tending to find, but this is work that's currently going on, so I don't really have a result to cite in particular, but we are trying to investigate how in different creative jobs people are engaging with AI tools to help them. And so we're looking into like um, writers and designers and teachers or educators and music composers and how they're engaging in their professional work with AI tools.
Very
It's kind
cool.
of observational type study.
Yeah, a lot of potential here. And I was also thinking how much your work on the physical environment has expanded with this, these digital tools, because there really has not been that much work in the past in terms of what physical environments are conducive for creativity. So thank you for really expanding that research in very meaningful ways.
Um, yeah, well, in fact, uh, yeah, it is a not extremely investigated topic, the physical world, but we did collaborate for a while and still do with Jan Doel and Canan from Jan Doel from Netherlands and Canan Ceylan from Turkey. And they had done some work on this physical environment stuff. We collaborated with them in particular. And the reason we got into the virtual environment was to test stuff without creating physical rooms. But we realized that the virtual world offered a lot of things that you can't do in the real world, and that it's a whole new workspace for people to go to. And now we have almost stopped our work on physical environments, and we're just purely on the virtual world as the new place to work.
Huh. Can you say a little bit more about that? Like, is that the maybe the bigger comfort level of people in that environment, or what are you looking into in particular?
Well, first of all, for virtual meetings where people come together to work and they don't have to travel, people like that now. Second of all, it's we can create work rooms that fit a group's desire, and it costs us nothing, well, not much to build it, as you say. And third, so we can personalize things. And third, you can be avatar kind of anonymous and kind of look as you like in a creative way, which is not easy in the real world or impossible to be anonymous. And this, the anonymous effect, the avatar effect in general, is actually probably twice as powerful as the basic effect of the creative room. So we have been able to boost novice creative session participants almost doubling the number of ideas and the quality of their ideas, thanks to the combined effect of the virtual room looking cool and the avatar looking creative. And the virtual room looking creative, what makes it creative? In fact, it has what people dream a creative room should have. And so it is. That's the beauty of it.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. That just makes me think of some of my classroom sessions where my students are brainstorming and writing down their post-its, and some of them will hand them up, and then others just have them in a pile, and you have to say, I see you have ideas there, hand them up. So that sort of self-censorship, and how this could be a huge a really important tool for overcoming that, and just thinking in terms of like the feasibility of implementing this in an organization or in schools. Are there low cost headsets available? Could it be scaled at that level?
Well, in fact, either you go on a headset like an Oculus headset, which might cost around $300, I'm not sure now, um, or you just use your computer screen
Mhm.
and it's less immersive, but the effects are still there. And so in a normal computer room or everyone with their computer, just on the screen, you can see your avatar walking around in a virtual room. You can move around with your mouse instead of so-called with your hand controllers. And it's simply less immersive, but it's still a quality effect of being virtualized.
Well, maybe for
So
our next keynote,
possible.
we should all be avatars in here. That's really
Yeah. Well, there are conferences in which it's in a avatar auditorium and the people come as avatars. I've been to some. And they sit in the amphitheater as an avatar. If they want to raise a question, they raise their hand as an avatar. There's an avatar presenter with a PowerPoint screen. And they found in those conferences that um, to enhance the quality of the conference, it's good to have an avatar coffee break in which the avatars stand around drinking fake coffee because it's all bogus, and they talk to each other, and this enhances the quality of the conference experience. So, what you're talking about is totally feasible.
Yeah, well, I don't think we'll get that together for our lunch hour today, but next year, see you. Oh, wow.
Mm.
Prompting a lot of thoughts in the chat. Just going back to that previous question about how AI might be a judge or a sounding board partner. Um, there was a follow-up. What might be some top skills that you would want to train an AI for?
Well, you can train it to be a judge, first of all, by giving it stuff that was judged by humans with the idea and the human judge score, and you can even explain why it got a high score or low score according to humans, and it learns quite well how to be a good judge, in fact. And Gen AI trained judge system will correlate with humans like any other human judge who's been trained to be a judge in a task. Um, so this, if you're interested in that whole topic, for example, the work of Roger Beatty and colleagues is very advanced on that topic. Um, However, you can train or orient a Gen AI system to do other things. For example, if you say, here's an idea, uh, try to make it more weird, but it will, in fact. Or you could say, if you ask a Gen AI for lots of ideas on a topic, it will give lots of ideas, and they're not bad. But there's a good quantity. but they tend never to be super great and super original. In fact, in most benchmarking studies, you'll find that they are like the average person or above average, slightly above, and they are never, usually almost never, in what you'd call the top 10% of most original ideas that humans could give in a normal human sample. If you give a Gen AI a task and you give the same task to like 5 to 10 humans who don't talk to each other, you'll end up to get pretty similar sets of similar quality in general. So an AI system, it's like having a buddy or two or three or four or five. And by the way, if you're interested to try it and you have access to Bard, Claude, ChatGPT, etc., then you can give your task to these different AIs because they were trained a little differently. And they'll give you a little bit different ideas. So you can have three collaborators helping you out if you got Claude, Bard, and ChatGPT.
Yeah, so going back to Roger Beattie's SEMGIS, I believe, is his large language model, and other there are others out there as well. I know Selçuk Acar has MOTES, and I very much wish those had been out 10 years earlier when I was in graduate school, because it would have saved me hours and hours on divergent thinking scoring. So there are a lot of implications in terms of this is making creativity research a lot more low cost as well, which is really wonderful.
Yeah. I'll tell you one thing that we're working on, but it's very early stage. In our VR world, where people are avatars, we have introduced an avatar who is an autonomous agent. In other words, there's an avatar who is a ChatGPT Gen AI in its head. And so in the avatar room, one or more of the participants is not a human anymore.
Oh, wow.
And people know it. It's no surprise, okay? Because if you ever talk to or text and chat with a Gen AI, you realize it doesn't look like a human, really. But in any case, people react very well to an autonomous agent, as we call it, avatar, as a member of a creative thinking group.
Huh. So what's the research question? What are you trying to get at with those avatars?
Well, we do mostly applied psychology research and ergonomics. And so we're trying to see the way people interact with an autonomous avatar Gen AI agent and how that agent is integrated in a creative thinking group and whether it offers anything more than just another human who we could put.
Wow, this is all very cool stuff, and I think we could keep going for another hour probably. The time just flew by. So I want to thank you again, Todd, so much for being here. I've learned a lot based on the questions in the chat, comments in the chat. So has our audience. So I so appreciate you being here today. This was really, really fantastic.
Well, thanks so much for your invitation. And you have my email there, so don't hesitate to be in touch. And, as we say, feel free to write me an email 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I will try to get back to you as soon as possible. And in case I don't get back to you, I got to say this. The U-Paris email, sometimes it's a little bit messy system, technology-wise. So don't hesitate to write to me at todd.lubart@gmail.com, because in Gmail, we can trust. In U Paris, we cannot trust.
Well, that is a good lesson to end on, I guess. So let's give one more a big round of applause to Dr. Lubart. Thank you so much for being here today. Uh,
Okay,
Yes.
well, have a nice lunch break over there, or if that's time for lunch. And as I say, don't hesitate to be in touch. And thanks again to the organizers of the event, to Molly, to Gerard, and everyone else on your event. And nice to see you all and be here together with all of you. So um, have a good continuing session.
Thank you. It was
Yes.
such a pleasure.
Thank
So
you. I have an announcement for the afternoon. We have one change in the schedule, and that is that the mainstream introduction to AI, to creativity, a practical approach will be at 12:15, not 1:15. So we have four amazing sessions at 12:15. We have Creating the Unexpected, a journey from sneakers to pacemakers. Teaching Creative Thinking in Higher Education, Concepts and Techniques. Creativity is Dead, Long Live Creativity, CPS in the Age of AI. And the Mainstream Introduction to AI to Creativity, a Practical Approach, coming up.
thank you, Sue. So as Sue said, we have some wonderful sessions coming up this afternoon. First, we have a 45-minute lunch break. So we will come back at 12:15 for those concurrent sessions. And again, you can find the links for that in the chat box. We welcome any of you who would like to stick around and network to just stay in the main Zoom room. And also, finally, I hope to see many of you this afternoon from 15 to 2:45. We'll be giving